Today our target is I can simplify algebraic expressions using all the rules of exponents. So we're going to combine all the rules together to try to simplify expressions. Our first four examples look like this. Example number 1. A to the negative 3 divided by 4a to the 4th times 3a squared times 3a times 3a squared. So the first thing we're going to do is simplify the bottom. I'm going to use my multiplication rule of exponents, saying if I have like bases being multiplied, I will add the exponents. So the top I'm going to leave the same, a to the negative 3, divided by numbers I treat like numbers. So I'm going to take 4 times 3 times 3. So 4 times 3 is 12. 12 times 3 is 36. Now when I multiply like bases, I keep the base of a. I add the exponents. 4 plus 1 plus 2. So 4, 5, 6, 7. A to the 7th. Now I still have like bases being divided, so I subtract those exponents. So on the top I'm going to have a to the negative 3 minus 7 divided by 36. Remember, this 36 stays, doesn't move anywhere, it has no exponent, it stays at the bottom of the fraction. Remember, when you subtract the exponents, the base comes to the top. So negative 3 minus 7 gives me a to the negative 10th divided by 36. No negative exponents, we must have all positive exponents. So I take the a to the 10th and I move it to the bottom to make it positive. My final answer is 1 divided by 36a to the 10th. Alright, number 2. First I'm going to simplify the top. Anything that I can combine with the multiplication rule, I will. I have a 4 on the top. I don't have anything else, any other number, so I keep the 4. I have a y to the first and a y to the negative 3, so I add those powers to give me y to the negative 2. X to the 4th, there's no other x to combine it with, so I keep it on the top. On the bottom, I see I have a 3, an x, and a y, nothing to combine, so I keep 3x to the 3rd, y to the negative 4th. Now I see I have like bases being divided, so I'm going to subtract those powers. I check out the numbers. I have 4 divided by 3. That doesn't divide evenly, and it can't be reduced, so I keep the 4 on the top, and I keep the 3 on the bottom. So I look at my x's. I have x to the 4th on top, x to the 3rd on the bottom, so that'll be x to the 4 minus 3 on top of the fraction. And I have y to the negative 2 divided by y to the negative 4. So it'll be y to the negative 2 minus negative 4 on the top. Now I simplify my powers. I have 4x to the first. Y minusing a negative becomes positive. So it'll be y squared over 3. So 4xy squared divided by 3 as my final answer. Alright, number 3 says I have x to the 3rd times y to the negative 3, z to the negative 3, x to the 3rd, y to the 0, divided by 2, y squared, z to the 3rd. So anything to the 0 power is 1, so I'm going to cross out the y to the 0 power. It cancels out because when you multiply by 1, it doesn't change anything. Again, I'm going to use my multiplication rules of exponents on the top. I have x to the 3rd times x to the 3rd. Add those powers. 3 plus 3 is 6. And I don't have anything with the y or the z on top, so I keep y to the negative 3, z to the negative 2. Divided by nothing to simplify on the bottom, 2y squared, z to the 3rd. Now I'm ready to use my division property of exponents. So the x, I don't have any x's on the bottom, so the x to the 6th is going to stay on top. My 2, I don't have any coefficients on the top other than 1, so I'm going to keep my 2 on the bottom. Now I do have a y to the negative 3 and a y squared on the bottom, so that's going to be y to the negative 3 minus 2. And same with the z's, it's going to be z to the negative 2 minus 3. Simplify my powers. I have x to the 6th, y to the negative 5th, z to the negative 5th, divided by 2. Anything to the negative power goes to the bottom of the fraction. So x to the 6th stays on top. 2, y to the 5th, z to the 5th goes to the bottom as my final answer. Alright, number 4. Same thing. I look to simplify the top. I see that I have like bases being multiplied, so I add the powers. Negative 1 plus 4 is x to the 3rd. Now I look at the bottom and I have this entire expression raised to the negative exponent, so I'm going to move that to the top and make it 2x to the negative 4, and now instead of raised to the negative 3 power, it's the positive 3 power. So right now I have nothing on the bottom because this was all raised to the negative, so I move it to the top of the fraction. Now I simplify. I use the power to the power rule. So this is x to the third times 2 to the third times x. Remember, you multiply these. Negative 4 times 3 is a negative 12. So remember, this power gets handed to the 2 to the first and the x to the negative 4. So now I have like bases here being multiplied, so I'm going to add the powers. I'm going to evaluate 2 to the third. Remember, it's not 6, it's 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. And then 3 plus a negative 12 gives me x to the negative 9. Take the negative exponent and move it to the bottom of the fraction. My final answer is 8 divided by x to the 9th. Alright, I have 2 more examples for you. They get a little bit bigger and a little bit harder. Alright, so number 5 says, I have 2u to the third v to the negative 3 times u to the third v squared divided by uv to the third raised to the third power, everything raised to the third power. So the first thing I'm going to do is simplify everything I can inside the parentheses, and I'll save this power out here till the end. So on the top, I'm going to multiply my numbers. I see that I just have 2 and nothing else, so I keep the 2. U to the third times u to the third, add those powers, you get u to the 6. V to the negative 3 times v squared, add those powers, you get v to the negative 1. This is a power raised to a power, so I hand that power of 3 out to everything. So the bottom becomes u to the third, v to the 9th. Remember, you multiply those powers, all raised to the third. Now I have like bases being divided, so I'm going to subtract those exponents. So I have 2, 6 minus 3 gives me u to the third, and negative 1 minus 9 gives me v to the negative 10, all raised to the third power. Now I got to hand this third power out to everything inside the parentheses. So I got 2 to the third, u to the 3 times 3, which gives me u to the 9th, v to the negative 10 times 3, which gives me v to the negative 30th. Evaluate the exponent, the number. 2 to the third is 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. U to the 9th stays on top. Since v is raised to the negative 30 power, it goes to the bottom. So my final answer is 8 u to the 9th, v to the 30th. Alright, finally, the last problem. Really big mess on top, so I'm going to simplify it. I look for numbers. I have a 2 and a 2, so 2 times 2 is 4. X squared, x to the negative 4, so I add those. I have x to the negative 2. Then I add another x to the negative 3, so that'll give me x to the negative 5. I look for y's. I have a y to the negative 2, and I have a y to the negative 4, so that gives me y to the negative 6. And I have z squared and z to the negative 2. When I add 2 plus negative 2, that gives me z to the 0, so these two just cancel out and go away. So on the top, I'm left with 4, x to the negative 5, y to the negative 6. Now I'm ready to simplify my bottom, and I see there's nothing there to combine. So I raise all that to the second power. Now I have like bases being divided, so I'm going to subtract my powers. So I have 4 on top, x to the negative 5 minus negative 1, that's actually going to add 1. So you're going to get x to the negative 4th. Y to the negative 6 minus 2 is y to the negative 8. Z to the negative 1 has nothing to combine with. It stays on the bottom, all raised to the second power. So I'm going to switch the negatives. These two are going to go to the bottom. This one's going to go to the top. So I got 4z over x to the 4th, y to the 8th. And then I'm going to raise all that to the second power. So 4 squared is 16. Z squared is z squared. X to the 4th squared, multiply those, gives you x to the 8th. Y to the 8th squared gives me y to the 16th as my final answer. Alright, we'll have some more practice problems tomorrow.